Welcome back. This week, as you know, has been dominated by news about the High Court's handling of the issue of same-sex marriage. The High Court will soon decide the fate of DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act, as well as Prop 8 from California. And while the discussion is centered on legal definitions and important ones about where rights begin and where they end, the heart of this conversation really is very personal. It's about people's lives and their ability to make the very personal decision to marry the person they love. So it's with that in mind that, and I've had a lot of terrific guests this week, and we've tried to read the tea leaves with the High Court, but we said let's put that to the side here and let's talk about what this means to real people and real lives here. And we have one story tonight of one same-sex couple and how their lives have changed now that they've been able to legally marry in the state of New York. And for that, we're very pleased to be joined by Carl Parker. Carl, thank you very much for a few minutes.
Thank you for having me.
In TV, so I try and do the Reader's Digest version, but in short, you and your partner were together for about 11 years, and then you got married 2 years ago,
10
right?
years, and we got married 2 years ago.
One of the justices said, hey, you're just fighting about a label here. What's the difference, whether it's a civil union or it's just really a piece of paper? I would suspect you disagree with that.
Completely. It's about equal rights. Civil unions don't carry the same rights as legal marriages. The federal government provides about 1,100 rights to heterosexual couples. You know, we're limited. We're limited by state. And certain states have certain regulations that they write into their constitution that limit us even less. My partner's home state of Wisconsin has written into a constitution what we have rights and what we have rights to. You know, from I can't visit him in the hospital, but I have the right to inherit his farm should he die here in New York. It's very crazy.
When you hear sometimes the antiseptic language about what you should and shouldn't be allowed to do, it's amazing. You guys know this. I don't remember an issue of any politics with the velocity that this issue has. So much has changed in a matter of years, let alone in the last decade. Can you guys remember one?
No, but you know, the great news about it, though, is look at the new polling that says 81% of 18 to 29 is in favor of gay marriage. I mean, it just, you know, this is the one time I say my kids are smarter than I was. We have changed, and unfortunately...
No, it's not just this time, Tom. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the good news is that it has changed and is changing quickly. And I think that, unfortunately, it took a number of my Republican friends, like a Portman, like a Cheney, to have gay children, which I'm a little angry about because, quite frankly, those politicians should have been always looking out for other people's kids. Shouldn't always be about their family. But the good news is that the day has come and is coming very quickly that this will no longer be an issue. It is. I don't compare it to the civil rights issue because I don't think that marriage should be compared to an African American sitting at a lunch counter. But I understand that it has taken a long time to get to where we are, which is really, really good news.
For anybody out there who says, Carl, well, you know what, let's let, the court maybe isn't ready for this. Let's let this naturally take its course over time and let's let state by state figure this out. What's the practical consequence of that? You mentioned Wisconsin and New York, for example, having different rules here, but I also heard one analogy, God forbid somebody passes away in a different state that doesn't recognize your marriage. I mean, even simple things is, God forbid you wanted to have the right to divorce.
Exactly.
You can't do that. It's just so much more complicated than I think some armchair quarterbacks make it out to be, right?
Exactly. Once we leave the state of New York, I mean, we have 9 states where we'll feel comfortable in. We moved here from Florida. Yeah. Right. And I would never think about wanting to move back. It kind of scares me. You know, we feel very, very safe living here in New York. I don't even feel very safe about thinking about going back to our farm in Wisconsin.
Can I ask you a personal question? Yeah. Is that, would you have been, you mentioned a lot of things under civil unions, et cetera, et cetera. If civil unions were structured in such a way that you were married by the city of New York, for instance, and that civil union carried the exact same legal requirements of a married person, because marriage seems to be the biggest hang-up here.
Yeah.
Would that have mattered to you? I mean, would you have said,
No.
well, why should Tom be married and I can only have a civil union? It really came down to the fact that you had different rights than I did.
Exactly.
Right?
If it was the same thing, it wouldn't matter to me.
Yeah, see, and that's where I always found that we could have gotten so much faster in this Because I don't know. Listen, I think we're always going to have haters who use derogatory terms, et cetera.
Right.
We live with it every day. It's disgraceful. But I think that part of the problem is I personally have never felt that the city of New York should be marrying people. I think whether you're straight or gay, they should be granting you a civil union, as long as that civil union provided you the same exact rights as a married person in a church. See, I always viewed marriage as a church function, not a government function.
And look, what's interesting is when the first gay marriage bills in New York were defeated, a member of the assembly from Lower Manhattan, Deborah Gluck, actually introduced legislation to take the state out of the marriage business. And it's interesting that that's one way that you could look at this, because I don't know if I completely agree. It may not matter to Carl, but it may matter to somebody.
That's why I asked.
And to me, it's purely a question of time before you just have universal acceptance. Like, nobody thinks about the idea of interracial
There's an
marriage
inevitability
anymore.
to it. And Carl,
Completely.
I'm curious, if you got a chance on Tuesday, or Wednesday for that matter, to have the audience of the 9 justices, and they said the floor is yours. Tell us something we don't understand about this conversation. What would you tell them?
I think I'd tell them they just don't understand what the differences are. Those federal laws that protect heterosexual couples that don't protect us. And I just realized it myself, even recently with my husband. I said, God forbid one of us die. What will happen? Just in the case of the Supreme Court, she had to pay a $380,000 federal tax bill.
Right.
Yeah.
My husband and I have properties, we have investments in 401ks. We would be gutted.
Right.
One of us would go belly up financially in paying federal taxes.
Yep.
And people just don't seem to get that. Some people really believe it's about the religious side of marriage. For me, it's not.
Well, you said something I'd never heard before, but it makes sense. You only feel safe in 9 states.
You do.
And that's, I don't think by, hopefully, most Americans, if not all Americans, that's not the concept of what a state of a union should be.
No, it's not fair. My stepson, real quick, just got off a plane. He was with his partner, and they went to Disney World. And we had been there, Carol and I, 2 weeks earlier, and he said, we're going down. And in the airport, he said to his partner, he said, we're in Orlando now. You can't, we're not in D.C. Do not be affectionate to me in public. He says, and that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's the way it should never be in this country. I can't stand that.
No, look, it's a tremendous experience to have to grow up in a community that's not accepting. I had someone who used to work for me, worked as the creative director of my firm for 7 years, grew up in Cave City, Arkansas. Imagine being what's likely to be the only out person in Cave City, Arkansas, a town of 1,503. The joke was when he moved out of town, they had to change the sign to 1,502. But he was searching for a place where he could be himself. And that took him a little bit through the South and eventually to New York and eventually to a place where he's not married, but a place where he could if he wanted to be. And that's just, where New York has been a beacon, without getting too syrupy here. New York's been a beacon for people to emigrate here in search of the American dream from around the world. To some degree, the reason that marriage equality is so important is it also provides an opportunity for New York to be a beacon to pursue the American dream for folks who otherwise might not be accepted in America.
Well, Carl, I really appreciate a few minutes. Thank you very much. And
Thank you for
knock
having
on
me.
wood here, we won't have to have this conversation much longer. Thank you
you.
very much. All right, we take a quick break, everyone. When we come back, though, we will be heading, speaking of New York, to Lower Manhattan, where the stop and frisk trial continued today. And a police officer was on the stand where he was grilled. We're going to talk about why and what about that testimony made so many headlines today. Stay with us.